What's up, everybody?
Today we are talking Tame Impala.
Hell yeah.
Tell me, do you remember first hearing about Tame Impala?
I was definitely in high school. I don't remember the exact moment. Like, there wasn't like this wow moment where I first heard them and I was like, holy shit. Actually, there was a bit, I think, around the time of Lonerism, when it feels like we're only going backwards. The music video came out, and like turning that on the computer screen, and yeah, that's kind of how I got introduced to Tame Impala, which I guess was I guess that was the right way.
And you said it feels like we only go backwards. So what from then until you kind of dove into an album, like how long of a period was that?
It must have been around the same time, because I mean, what I do remember is like first impressions is like my mind being blown by them. I mean, they were just fucking awesome. Like, once I got that first like itch to start listening to them from like watching that music video and stuff, the first thing that we started listening to was Inner Speaker. And once you listen to Inner Speaker, you just get like blown away, because I feel like when I first heard Tame Impala, it was like everything that I felt like was lacking in music, just all into one new band, you know?
Okay, so you had some pretty strong feelings about Tame Impala.
For sure, because like the fuzzy guitars, like the psychedelic nature, like it really had a lot of elements of like the Beatles and like Supertramp and like just cool ass bands, Led Zeppelin, like cool bands from before, but it was done in a completely new way. It was like a new kind of psychedelic way too. So like a lot of the songs of the 60s, like psych rock, for me, they don't really hit. Like, it needed some fresh flavor in it. And I guess I'm mostly talking about like Inner Speaker right now.
Okay. Yeah. The first time I heard about them was Lonerism was out, and someone played them for me. And it was probably Mind Mischief. And, of course, I think they're like, oh, you know, there's the like obvious like Beatles influence. This sounds like the Beatles. And I thought it was interesting that somebody from high school was like, there was this new psychedelic music. I just remember noticing the harmonies that, you know, reminded me of the Beatles, and especially Mind Mischief has like a pretty like heavy guitar riff.
Yeah,
which,
and
like,
it's got
stood
those
out.
Ringo type loose fills on the toms, and he even plays
Crazy drums.
He even plays a Ludwig, I think, like same kind of kit, and tunes it kind of like Ringo. So
yeah, so it definitely has that.
he plays a Hofner too.
Oh yeah, so yeah, he's pretty Beatles out. It definitely has that 60s psychedelic influence, and it was just kind of like it made the impression. You know, I didn't forget about the band after that. I don't know if I went and like listened to an album. It was like, oh shoot, you know, I have to go, but their name kept coming up, which eventually got me to listen to them. Yeah, but that was Lonerism.
They were pretty hard to miss, I feel like, in our friend group, because like when we were growing up, you know, in high school, and we were all started kind of just like hanging out all day and watching movies, Tame Impala became like inescapable. I feel like we were always putting on Tame Impala. I think one thing I want to stress too is like when Tame Impala, with their first two albums, it was really, really psychedelic. And kind of something that I want to stress is like when in that era, when we were in high school, so it was like 2014-ish, 2012.
Yeah, that's when it came. The second one came out. Yeah.
They were just like completely psychedelic.
Yeah, those first two albums, and then the singles and EPs before. Dang, I can't believe that first album came out in 2010, and you know, it seemed to have been reviewed like well, but I was not aware of them at all. I would have liked to have been very aware of them. And then their first album is what kind of really got me into them. So I
Their first album.
yes, Inner Speaker. So yeah, the psychedelic, 60s guitars, but also the way he writes riffs and like drum parts, it has a lot of drive to them. And, it kind of just reminded me of stuff like Queens of the Stone Age or even Metallica, just like do on
Mm-hmm.
Why Won't You Make Up Your Mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot. So that was very like that attracted me to the music. I thought it was very cool, and obviously the songs are just like very catchy. He's very good at coming up with catchy verses and choruses, which he does throughout all of his albums. But on this first one, hearing it with those like psychedelic guitars and big drum sound, yeah, it was great. And it was for the longest time. It was like a definite like, oh, this is my favorite Tame Impala album. I don't know if I'd exactly say that today, but I still love the album just as much.
Yeah, same. But I would say my favorite one was right off the bat was Lonerism because I felt like it kind of it just had more depth to it. The songwriting just was so much more complex. I feel like, and he wasn't just riffing out, but like they're kind of both equally good though. I would say his first three albums are all like on the same tier of good, and they're all the same amount of good for like different reasons, which is really cool. Which just shows like how well rounded of a musician he is, and yeah, it's pretty. It's been awesome to grow up watching that and listening to that as the soundtrack to the back of your life, basically.
Yeah, if you could knock out like three like uh well received albums, they each have their own like specific, kind of personality. Those first three albums, you you obviously gain a lot of fans, which is what happened, and he deserves it. And it could kind of carry your like ticket sales for a long period of time. Like I'm sure he could just kind of release whatever he wants, or not even release an album for a long time, and like the Tame Impala name is like will stay like pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, we were just looking at him on Spotify, and he's 211th in the world, so of the most streamed artists, which is incredible to think about. When I was in high school, I would have never even imagined that Tame Impala would be as big as they are. You know what? Now that we kind of like talk about it, I do remember the first time I heard Tame Impala,
Yes,
and this
go
is
on.
kind of this is probably kind of like cringe, but Tyler the Creator shouted him out on one of his songs on Beamer.
It was a Beamer.
I think it was Beamer, and he was just talking about like taking his girl like in his Beamer and like how they were listening to Tame Impala, and I think I probably heard a couple songs, but that was really where I was like, let me like dive deeper into this band, and I was like, holy shit, this band is so good.
Yeah, he would. I remember him promoting them, like at least just by mentioning them in obviously like Beamer or in interviews or something. So around that time, because 2012. So between Goblin and Wolf, when he was like first kind of coming onto the scene.
Yeah, Tyler the Creator. Yeah.
Yeah, Tyler the Creator. I do remember him liking them a lot, and it was interesting.
Yeah.
That like that's what he was. Inspired to. That's what he gravitated towards. Which was just like, someone shows you a song, you hear Tyler the Creator talking about him. Eventually, you're gonna check out like, okay, like let me see this album. Let's hear the album.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show why Tyler the Creator is still here to this day. I mean, he has a great ear, and another interesting part of Tame Impala has been like his crossover with like hip hop artists. Like a lot of crazy different like hip hop artists that you'd think would never listen to him like really fuck with them.
Yeah, he makes good music, and it's been interesting to see because Currents was released.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the biggest hit like right off the bat. it kind of, I mean, it was well received, I guess, and like their biggest album, obviously after each album they released kind of kept getting bigger, but throughout that year they really really grew in popularity and with songs like going viral. So by the time, probably a year before this fourth one came out, people, I mean, Kevin Parker even put out something. I don't know if he was stressed about like the fans wanting the fourth album because they were booked to play Saturday Night Live. So they had just finished a whole run of Currents for like 3 years. I think they had just played Coachella, and that next year they got booked to headline Coachella and then on SNL for the first time. And he kind of didn't have an album, you know, at all those 3 years later. And people, you know, were wanting, because of the growth in popularity and him getting these big gigs and so much time had passed, they kind of thought he would, all right, another banger. But I think he probably spent another year making the Slow Rush after that.
Yeah, I mean, from the timeline, from what I remember between Currents and the Slow Rush was like, Currents came out in like 2016, and then I saw Tame
15.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, and then I saw Tame right before
August 2016.
Oh shit, and then I saw Tame right before the pandemic hit. It was like the last show I went to, and that was in March of, it must have been 2020.
Yeah.
So
a month after the Slow Rush came out. What a horrible time to release an album too.
Yeah, and I can't remember if the Slow Rush came out just before it or just after it.
I think February of 2020.
February 2020.
So right,
it must have come out.
Everybody was turning their attention to everything else.
Yeah, that was actually the first place I saw someone wear a mask, which was like trippy. Because like you hear about this like weird virus coming from China, and then you don't think much of it, and then like, and I'm at just like a Tame Impala show, and like I just see somebody with like a mask. I'm like, oh shit, this shit is like crossing over here.
Yeah, so like 2015, I remember I wasn't even like super pumped about Currents when it came out. It sounded so different. It took me at least until this, I don't remember exactly when Currents came out. I feel like spring of 2015, and I probably wasn't hit to it till around like maybe the end of summer, maybe which isn't like, what is that, a few months after. And you know, all the songs are very good. It's very accessible. Obviously their most accessible album. But it's also so weird sounding. I think all of his albums are weird sounding. He makes them all by himself.
Right.
And every time I've heard, there's like, I don't know, the synths, because like right off, you would assume it's like a HD, like clear album. But if you listen to it on good headphones, there's something rough about it. And I don't know if it's just like really compressed or something, but it kind of keeps like that rawness, that like psychedelic. And that's like one of my favorite things about Currents. We are not talking about these albums in chronological order at this point, but
yeah, it's cool though.
It's 3 of them.
I think it makes sense.
Or we're going to talk about 4. We keep talking about the 4th album like it doesn't exist. There's a 4th album.
Yeah,
we'll talk about it later.
It's like the 4th child that no one pays attention to.
Yeah. Spoiler for how the end of the pod will go, but yeah, Currents, because it comes off as like accessible, and you know, you could kind of play it like amongst like other pop tunes. But when I did, something very like different about it, which I like.
I mean, it has a lot of the chord progressions and a lot of the pacing of a pop album, but the layers of it are still really psychedelic, and they're super, I don't know, in Tame Impala style. It's hard to describe because still to this day, I'd say like nothing sounds like it really. And when it came out, like when Currents came out, I vividly remember people listening to it and their first reactions were literally like, I've never heard anything like this before. Like when Let It Happen came out, like there's nothing even to compare it to. And I mean, I don't know. It's just, it's so rhythmically complex. the way it kind of glitches into new parts, but yet it's a pop, yet it's a pop song with regular, drums and guitar and vocals, but then it starts like glitching and becomes like, and it just becomes all a synth or goes all through a phaser. Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say other than like when that shit came out, like it blew everyone's mind. At least it blew
That's
my
interesting.
mind.
Yeah, must have
Yeah.
been running in different circles. I don't. When did it come out? 2015. Yeah. Okay.
I
So it's
remember it being
2015.
I remember it being the soundtrack to my senior year, and I graduated high school in 2016.
So, I mean, yeah, it's a album that's been out for a year or less. So it's not like you'd stop listening to it once you became a senior in high school.
No. Yeah, no, that was the beginning where I was like, holy shit, like
Oh, yeah.
this sounds way different than anything that's come out before it.
Yeah, I don't know if I had that exact same reaction. I did like the songs a lot. I remember a band practice, Aaron started playing the riff to The Less I Know, The Better.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things where I just heard the album like a few times. I didn't like even giving it a deep listen. And, I recognized the riff. But for some reason, I thought it would have been like played like how he kind of did things more on the earlier albums. Like it's a pretty drive-in riff that he made this cool like pop song, or one of the best Tame Impala songs. But it still has like that oomph of like the stuff he was making on the first two albums, which I really liked.
Yeah,
and he never went
still
into it on
punchy.
the song. I would have liked to have heard it, just with the. That
yeah.
sort of a thing. But yeah, just he was trying to create these like well structured song, which I really love all the songs on Currents.
He kind of went disco
for the most part.
on that one. I feel like
Yeah,
it has kind of a disco beat. Some of the songs, especially that one.
that's more. I feel that for the fourth album.
I would say I feel like Currents had more disco vibes, and I would say the Slow Rush had more dance vibes, like electronic dance.
Oh, yeah.
But they're kind of in the same vein. I would say for disco, I know he's a big like Bee Gees fan, so I would say like I feel Bee Gees vibes from Currents in some of the beats and some of the drive of it. And then the Slow Rush, if we're talking more dance, I think more of like, I don't know a particular artist, but I would say like somebody who would be on like Boiler Room. I don't know, Kate Renata.
Okay. Yeah, there's definitely
Like there's a
that
difference
on the
there.
fourth. Yeah, on the fourth one. Yeah, I mean the third one has all sorts of, like I like the trap, psychedelic like hi hat, of, what's that second to the last song? On Currents. Oh, Love/Paranoia.
Oh yeah.
And that one is probably more of a slow. I think I maybe saw a video of them perform it live, like on TV, and it kind of drew me to this song.
Yeah.
But there's like snaps. It's very different from what he's doing on the first two albums, and it's kind of crazy, especially because he makes them by himself. To like, it's kind of to have like gold like that, like 3 times in a row.
Definitely. I mean, he is. It's hard to like state how talented he is. I mean, to make those kind of albums all by yourself, and they're all in different and they all go in different directions. They're all super complex. It's just I don't know anybody else that could do that.
Yeah, on that level. I mean, who are they? Like Trent Reznor, I guess. That's probably it.
Maybe, yeah. I would
They're
say
fucking
in some
big.
way.
They're arena. Yeah, they've been arena since the 90s.
Yeah, and I would say at the peak, 9 Inch Nails was like as big as Tame Impala right now. At their peak.
Yeah, that's honestly one of the. I mean, that's probably the only comparison like that I could make.
Yeah.
Who's like, pretty hands on. I know Trent Reznor is not like the only one in the band, but as far as a very like hands-on and innovative,
he's definitely the driving
songwriter
force.
and producer.
So for the first 2 albums, the producer, for the first 2 Tame Impala albums, the producer was the same producer that did a lot of stuff for MGMT and Flaming Lips.
Okay. I've heard, yeah, that's good. I think for maybe all of them, the mixing and mastering was by the dude that did the Flaming Lips albums. But yeah, I wonder what that relationship is like with him and Kevin Parker and what he's doing for him. Like,
I would assume it's a lot of just tightening up. I think like Kevin Parker kind of has the vision and the know-how to make it sound like his vision, and then for the most part, the producer would be like tying loose ends and kind of like answering any back and forth that he might have had for a prolonged time. I would say it's pretty minimal.
Yeah, I mean, because he's recording him basically like at his home, so I can't imagine that dude's going over there like on the daily.
Yeah, and like the interviews I've seen and kind of the things that people say about Kevin Parker is that like one of the reasons why he makes music alone is because he doesn't like that input from other people. Like it's easier for him as an artist to be by himself so he can make like these critical decisions that sometimes you would get hung up on with another person. So it's no diss to like his bandmates at all or like the people that play with him live. It's just like that's like the way he writes, and so that's kind of like I would assume that a producer would kind of be in that same vein of like let me just like finish as much as I can.
Yeah, I mean, that's good he knows how to work like that. It'd be shitty if he felt he had to like compromise with like other people's bad ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I wonder what that like dynamic is like. Do you think they'll ever fall apart, the live band? And like do you think like 10 years from now you go to see Tame Impala and it's like Kevin Parker not playing guitar for the whole show? There's like a 20-piece like giant band, like 3 percussionists,
like a symphony,
like a band the size of like Billy Joel's band or whatever, like
that'd
all
be
playing.
badass.
It'd be kind of like, I dig it. They might as well because he's making all the music himself.
Yeah, and
like
I feel
Gorillaz.
like he has the money now and like the power to like make that happen. But I would say in terms of the backing band, well, first of all, the backing band is Pond. They're their own band. I'm pretty sure it's all of the members. I don't know. I'm going to have to look into it. But there's at least a couple that are in Pond.
Kind of. The bass player that used to tour with them, I believe, is a singer for Pond. And the guy that plays keyboards, I think, is the drummer for Pond.
And what about everybody else? They're not in Pond?
I think the bass player used to tour with the Arctic Monkeys.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's British. The drummer's from France.
Yeah.
So I think during the pandy and they were like filming things, the I think the guy from Pond came back and played some like stuff with them.
Oh, okay.
Because a couple members couldn't. Yeah, something like that.
I see.
During the COVID stuff.
Yeah, so they all have they most of them have their own creative inputs, or they have their own.
They're all doing other stuff.
Yeah, creative directions that they go in. I mean, I wouldn't, if I was them, I wouldn't rock the boat too much with Kevin Parker. I would just do what he says because like that's a nice check for doing nothing.
I'm sure. Yeah, I doubt it's like that. I mean, I was more so joking about them falling apart and rocking the boat.
I mean, the keyboardist on stage does look like he hates his life. Like every time I see them, he looks miserable.
The other guitar player, that like doesn't move at all with the music. Yeah, that's like one thing. Because you want to talk about them as like a live band?
Sure.
So we've seen them a few times. You saw them first before I did, and that was summer FYF summer 16 with Kendrick.
Yeah, let me just talk about that for a second. So I think this was the first time I saw them. So the first time I saw Tame Impala was at FYF 2016. So we just talked about how Currents had come out in late 2015. And so they're coming high off the heels of Currents. Obviously, everybody's so freaking excited. But I don't know how FYF booked an even bigger act. They booked Kendrick Lamar on the To Pimp a Butterfly tour. So we saw back-to-back Tame Impala playing Currents, like brand spanking new, into Kendrick Lamar playing To Pimp a Butterfly, basically band spanking new with a full jazz band. And like that was probably, I mean, that and Frank Ocean are up there.
And it was fresh off of Untitled Unmastered.
Yeah,
2 years or over a year off To Pimp a Butterfly.
We'll have to talk about that Frank Ocean experience when that podcast comes. But anyways, yes, Tame Impala, and then To Pimp a Butterfly. Yes, Untitled Unmastered came out. That's kind of autistic of you.
It was fresh off to like a year and a half after.
Yeah, that's still pretty fresh, though, I would say. It was like nothing else had come out, and it was like marinated in. I think it had won a bunch of awards by then. Everybody was
exactly
so fucking excited.
So everyone there has like known these two albums for at least a year, you know?
Yeah, and so I remember like Kevin Parker's playing, and it was something like Dope, like Eventually, which is a great song live. It's a great song, and then playing live is always killer. And then Kevin Parker's like, "Oh, are you guys excited for Kendrick Lamar?" And everybody's like, "Ah!" And he's like, "Oh, me too." And like seeing that mix of like rock and like pop and psychedelia mixed with like a hip hop artist who's, you know, doing like a hip hop jazz fusion album, like it just made me feel really good about music, like in general, the direction that it was going in at the time, like 2016. Since then, it's been, you know, it's had its great moments, and it's had its moments that I necessarily am not as into, but like that period of time, I would say, for like indie music and hip hop was really dope.
Yeah, that's probably, I mean, as far as like those two artists covered so much ground as far as what I spent time listening to.
Yeah,
like,
and at the same time.
Yeah.
Which was cool.
Yeah. So that show I did not go to because I had just seen Kendrick for I think the second time, and second or third, honestly. And I had never seen Tame Impala, but I did not want to buy a 2-day festival ticket for one day. But anyways, that leads us to the second time you saw Tame Impala, and the first time I saw Tame Impala, which was Desert Days 2018. We got our tickets pretty last second. I was pretty excited. We were both pretty excited to go see them. We had never been to Desert Days before. I think that was the first year at their new location in at Lake Paris. It was very nice. The stage is right up against the water, like on the sand, and it takes forever to like get down there. I think we maybe get down there 15 minutes before they hit the stage, and they hit the stage maybe even a little late. So rain is by that point is like pouring down. There's like a pretty bad like lightning storm happening. It's pretty sick because there's lightning happening like right behind Tame Impala.
Yeah, and it's on a lake.
Yes.
In like a kind of like a, not a state park, but it's like it's like this lake like with the beachfront. Yeah, and it's got the stage like right in the sand, and you're like standing in the sand, and there's all these like trippy art installations and like teepees and stuff.
Yeah, cool. Anyway, Desert Days, if you have the chance to go. It's very nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, they opened up with Nags, which is cool because that's a very just like cool thing to hear when a band goes on stage, like that loud, like.
The visuals are always sick too. It's like the staticky, glitchy, like pixelated type thing.
Yeah, I was very much enjoying myself. They play, I think, Let It Happen, which was great. It was like really great, actually.
Yeah.
And then
that was amazing.
The next song they play.
Also, it's one thing about that show too is like it was super intimate. Like it kind of felt like it was a really small crowd for Tame Impala.
Yeah, like if you were to go, like the amount of people that can maybe fit into like the House of Blues, maybe a little bit more because they were the biggest band playing that weekend.
Yeah, but it was definitely like about like House of Blues level, crowd.
Which is a very good sized crowd. A lot of, if you could catch a big band at like that size venue,
Totally.
I recommend
And
going.
everyone was happy because Tame Impala was happy because like it was a sick show, like it had a great lineup, and then like the crowd is happy. There's not a lot of people. Like it's really like insulated because you're like on this lake. Anyways.
Yeah. No, it was very intimate. We were all kind of everyone there was very excited to see Tame Impala because this is kind of at the end of their current run, and they just kind of kept getting bigger. First time, really, I think they might have been headlining festivals. Like you said, that concert for Kendrick and Tame, like that was just kind of a sweet spot because they were not as much headliners yet. The festival I saw Kendrick at before, he wasn't headlining. I think Imagine Dragons played after him, and the other day was like Kanye West, but he wasn't that famous.
Yeah.
So, and with ticket sales, so that was just kind of a sweet spot, like right before they become their own headliners. You get to see them on which is like those moments are very nice to catch.
Right. Kendrick, I hate Imagine Dragons, but Kendrick Lamar would probably still open for Imagine Dragons, like sadly.
Oh, as far
like
yeah, they wouldn't
they were on a
bill
bill
it
together.
like that, I imagine now, but I know what you mean because there's stadium act.
Yeah.
Yeah, and stadiums are like hard to do.
I feel like every nurse in the world listens to Imagine Dragons.
Yeah. I think that is a correct statement.
Yeah.
Fact.
My orthodontist, like front desk lady, would always be listening to Imagine Dragons.
Yeah, I was just because they're a headliner, I wanted to, check them out. But the entire other party was like, we're leaving. So I would have liked to have. But,
Were they good?
We were leaving. I don't know.
Oh, you left. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, they didn't want to watch. And I was like, we bought the ticket.
Yeah. I kind of, I'd probably watch like 2 songs just since I'm there.
Yeah. For me, any like headlining festival, I'm gonna check out the headliner.
Yeah, but if I
Unless
really had to,
like someone I don't.
If I really had to piss, I would leave.
Oh yeah, you piss whenever.
Yeah. No. I mean, like if I was watching Imagine Dragons.
Oh yeah.
If I like really had to piss and they were like about to go on, I would just leave. I'm like, okay. I wanted to see one song, but I don't care.
We've been talking a lot about a band I didn't even watch.
Yeah.
So anyway, third song. They play. I had never actually heard before, but it is one of their earliest songs, "Sundown Syndrome." I didn't think they were playing a new song just because of like how it sounded, but I remember liking it a lot live, and it was like one of the coolest things, or performances I had seen. And then immediately after the concert ended because the rain was too crazy.
The one cool thing about Imagine Dragons live is like, no, I'm just kidding.
Well, they performed with Kendrick at the Grammys.
Oh yeah, that's
Mad
right.
City.
Oh yeah. Oh fuck. Okay, I was bringing them up as a joke.
Mad City.
Yes. So, Sundown Syndrome, you said?
Yes, it was great, but then the concert ended right after.
Yes.
Which sucked because it was looking to be really good, and then they posted the set list like idiots. No, not idiots, but it looked cool. Like I was bummed because Jeremy Storm was on the set list.
Yeah. So at Desert Days, they played 2 songs, the ones that Noah just said, and then it got rained out because it started like literally being like a crazy like rain thunderstorm. And I mean, honestly, like, and they told us, oh, just go back to your cars and like, Tame Impala will be out like once, huh?
Wait it out.
Yeah, they're like, wait it out. Like, they'll be on shortly. So we went to our cars and we sat there for like 2 fucking hours. And then like it was still pouring and like we were just like, yeah, they're not going on.
Yeah, they just canceled it
after
a few hours.
They just canceled it, and then
Which
they said
sucks.
they'd be back, and then they were back recently.
Yeah, after I don't know, well, was that 2018? Yeah, so they came back 2022 and played Lonerism
Yeah,
in its entirety.
4 years later.
But between that, well, you saw them two more times, but we went and saw them.
Yeah.
So they finished whatever that Currents run was, or so we thought, and they got announced to headline Coachella, which is like they played Coachella to show you like how much they grew. They were like maybe a sub headliner in 2015.
2016.
2016 they played Coachella because Currents came out in the summer of 2015. I don't know. They might have played in 2015, but they were like a sub headliner of Coachella on the Currents run, and they don't come out with anything else, and then they get booked as a headliner.
Yeah, so it really seeped into the public conscience because I think that goes back to what I said. Like, nobody had heard anything like that before. And so it just had this immense staying power, and it honestly, like, grew bigger, like, as time went on because it was just, like, good. And it took a while for people to understand what they were hearing, and it took a while for it to spread, like, because it even hit, like, the radio and, like, everything. And so by the time they were headlining Coachella was probably the peak of their career thus far. We're talking in like 2022 right now. So I would say that their headliner at Coachella was probably the peak of their career thus far.
Yeah, they were only getting bigger at that time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Honestly, he's still kind of peaking. It's just like the Slow Rush was not as like big as like the other three, but
well, they're a big name that'll be big for a while.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do in the future.
Yeah, depending on how the next album is, who knows.
We keep
you said this a few times. You said this a few times. Like, I've never heard anything like this before. I think it's a little dramatic for the third Tame Impala album. I don't think.
Hell no.
I don't remember anyone having that reaction. It's not like they heard Death Grips, That's like, oh, I've never heard anything like this before. Or if you hear the Beatles for the first time. But Tame Impala, people usually say, oh, that reminds me of the Beatles.
I've never heard anyone hear Tame Impala and be like, oh, that reminds me of the Beatles.
Other than you. I think.
No. Who said that? Name one person.
Anthony Fantano.
Okay, that is one person.
When my sister showed me the Tame Impala.
Really?
I think if Tame Impala fans actually like got this far into the pod, like a good amount of them, I think you would be the loner. The lonerism, the 1000%. I think like how you just laughed in my face right now. I think you would look very stupid if that was on camera right now.
Okay,
the Beatles
he's
is
pointing
like
at me aggressively.
The Beatles is like the first thing anyone ever says when they hear Tame Impala.
I don't think so. I've never heard anyone say that.
You've never even. Well, I mean, have you thought that while listening to the music? You compared his drumming to Ringo.
Sure. Yeah, I've for sure heard them and been like, yeah, that that has like Beatles elements for sure. And I do think they sound like the Beatles in some aspects, but that's not like the first thing I go to. And if we're like comparing it to like, because it's kind of a false equivalence, like saying like, oh, this band sounds like the Beatles, and then what I said, where I said Currents is unlike anything you've ever heard before. Those are kind of like different things. But I would say, for the most part, it's such a weird thing to compare, but I would say that most people, when they hear Currents, the album Currents, they were like, damn, like, I don't think I've heard anything like this before. I don't think I've heard anything like this before.
I mean, I wouldn't know. I've never heard anyone say that.
Okay, name an album that sounds like Currents.
Like, that came out after? No, I'm kidding. No, I'm not saying that it's like, there's a lot of originality to it, but it's like, I've never heard anything like Aphex Twin when I first heard. I've never heard anything like that before. Death Grips I've never heard it, or like Hella, System of a Down even. But especially knowing Tame Impala and like some psychedelic music, like you could at least, the heavy Beatles influence, but then also the Flaming Lips, like their biggest stuff. Like,
yeah,
it's
but
not like,
I would say
not like
even their stuff doesn't really sound like Currents. Their stuff sounds like more like older Tame Impala, like Inner Speaker and Lonerism, I would say. The closest thing I could compare to Currents is maybe Supertramp. Maybe.
I don't like that band.
They're pretty sick.
So I would.
Kevin Parker's, that's a big influence on him.
I know he
especially
likes them a
his
lot.
vocal style is very similar.
See, you say that. I don't know how you don't hear like it's like there's so much John Lennon, or even all the Beatles, and
It's just not the first thing I jump to. Like, I'm not like, oh shit, he sounds like John Lennon. But like, I hear some like vocal phrasings in there that are like Lennon-esque. I hear some riffs that are Beatle-esque. I hear some riffs that are Led Zeppelin-esque in their music. So
yeah. The Led Zeppelin, especially on the song Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, they have a song called Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, which is also an underrated song. I don't know why it's only on Apple Music. It's like an iTunes exclusive. It's on Spotify. They didn't play it live also, so they didn't even fucking play Lonerism in its entirety at the other Desert Days, which was very disappointing.
Yeah.
It ruined the whole show.
Shit.
Yeah. But, yeah, definitely. Agree to disagree on the never heard anything like this before.
Yeah, let us know what you think in the comments if you're out there.
Yeah, if you've bothered to listen to this whole thing. But, yeah, I love Currents. I love Lonerism. And I love Inner Speaker. Now let's get to the fourth. The final.
Yeah, but we didn't finish talking about the times that we saw Tame Impala because we stopped at like
Me. We only needed to cover my ground.
No, we didn't even talk about when we saw them warm up for their Coachella set. We just said that they played Coachella.
Yeah, this is sounding like ridiculous. There's been a lot of Tame Impala shows. Yeah, we'll talk about it. But this is like, for me, like, wow. There's a lot.
Yeah, I've seen Tame Impala a ton of times. That's why last time you guys saw them at Desert Days, even though it was Lonerism in its entirety, which I would love to see, I was like, I'm just Tame Impala out, man. I've seen them so many times.
I feel that.
Yeah. But anyways, so if we're going back to their headlining Coachella show, usually Coachella bands play kind of a secret-ish show, I would say, somewhere in the Southern California area before they play Coachella, and it's kind of like a warm-up of their Coachella set. I don't know if every band does it, but a few of them do.
Yeah, a good amount of the, I don't know, let's say a third of the lineup.
Yeah.
I forgot what April Cella. And venues around California, even like up to the Bay. Like I know Radiohead, they'll do the Greek up there.
The Greek at Berkeley.
Which sounds amazing.
That's a sick venue.
That sounds an amazing place to
on
see
my bucket list.
I'd love if they fucking play. Because the only show, Radiohead will have their own episode, but the only shows they've like done like in SoCal, unless it's been the Shrine, is headlining Coachella like the whole last decade. You know, it's been very hard to see them here in Southern California. But like I said, we'll do a Radiohead episode. We'll get to Radiohead. That Coachella show. So they played at the Pomona Fox Theater a day before they headlined, I think Friday at that year's Coachella.
Yeah. Mind you, the Pomona Fox Theater, if you've never been there, is a small club. Small.
I'd say it's
I wouldn't say
theater.
It's a club. Small theater.
Yeah, like 20-something, 2,100. I don't know.
Yeah. So super
maybe,
small.
It might be less than that.
Maybe less than that. It's always a good place to see a show. But
see, I wouldn't say it's a super small. That's like the peak of like a lot of artists, like a theater act.
Yeah, but for a Coachella headliner.
New Coachella. Oh, but a warm-up show.
Okay. Like, looking at them on Spotify, they're the 211th most streamed group in the world. And we saw them in a club, like, sub 3,000. That's insane. And we were on the floor. Okay, so, anyways.
It would have been, like, wild seeing, like, Beyonce in there. But they're very new, like, to this. So, you know, people just saw them in that same venue a year before.
Yeah. Tame?
Yeah, they played there at the other Coachella show. They did the Pomona Fox Theater.
Oh, yeah. So they blew the hell up. Yeah, that year. So that was definitely Tame Impala's year. And so anyways, the energy was like wild. Like it was so hard to get a ticket. Like we all got tickets, and I had got a ticket for the floor. Yeah, I was front row. I don't think you guys went with me front row, and like
There were two entrances, and you went to one in the left, and we just went to the other. Yeah, we all got in. Tame Impala, I mean, went on, and also the show. Like it was very hard to get tickets to. Nobody could get tickets, except that sounds douchey, but yeah, except for us.
yeah, no, I
But
mean it was pretty hard to get tickets.
Once we got there, the place was like half filled. They like only sold tickets for like half of what it could hold, and there was just, I mean, you were on the against the rail, so I doubt you could notice.
I didn't notice. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So
which is super weird.
They were just doing like
totally
a run
could have sold it
through.
out.
Oh yeah. So it just seemed like, yeah, your phone was not allowed at the show. So it just seemed like they were, I guess, trying to do a run through in front of a small crowd for their big Coachella show. And yeah, I mean, it was pretty like nuts seeing like a headliner Coachella like show they had set up inside a theater with like lasers and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, they played their
very personal.
They played basically their Coachella headlining act with all lights and everything.
No big ring though. They couldn't fit the ring in there. The spaceship, like,
yeah,
whatever they started to bring out.
Yeah, because they played this like, what was it, like Apocalypse Dreams, where like there was like a UFO thing that basically came down, and I think it was during Apocalypse Dreams.
Yeah,
and they played it like when we saw them at the Fox Theater, and like it was dope, but it was like confusing because it was like super epic, and like it felt like there was supposed to be something else like going on at the time, and then like when you see the Coachella live stream, you're like, oh, there's like a giant like UFO ring that comes down during this part.
Yeah, they did like a different version of it. They had like some weird break in the middle. I remember.
Yeah, like a drum fill.
They really brought it down.
Yeah, and there's like a drum fill.
Yeah, that's a cool thing about their live show is when they will throw a phaser while the drummer's doing a fill. It's also great. But then, which reminds me, I mean, it's more of like a thing with a lot of bands and live acts are doing it now. I was shocked to see Tame Impala do it because it's a whole band and it's so many people on stage. But Kevin Parker, I don't know if it's every song, but during certain phrases, and like rappers do this, and I kind of like will just give them a bit more leeway, even though I would just prefer if they just had a hype man. But I get it just because it's so like wordy and breathy. You know, you can't do it all, but like a vocal backing track. And Kevin Parker does that for Tame Impala, which, I'd rather it not be that and just see like the live act.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
So a lot of their music is so heavily like processed in the studio that I can see why it's kind of hard to pull off live. I think they kind of like, I don't know. I would rather him just like have a band of like 20 people and like just have them all do like, the backing track. So he has like backing singers. Like it would be cool to see it with some like orchestral like instruments too. Like there's no reason not to, really. But I guess like the only reason not to is because like when they release Currents, I don't think Kevin Parker anticipated them being that big that he would have the capacity to do such a thing. And then by the time he did have the capacity to like have like a huge band like that, he was like over playing Currents, and then it was like the Slow Rush, and the Slow Rush didn't really have those like elements. But in the future, I totally agree with you. I would like to see more analog pieces of like these songs.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like with the band members, I don't know what are like within the set. Like there's some, because for instance, like the intro, the nags,
it's just like a sample.
So that's playing, which is like,
There's
that's
samples.
fine. They're just walking out on stage. I get it. It was more so about just like his like vocal, like the lead vocal.
Yeah,
and it's like a double track because he's singing over it, which is it just kind of takes it out. You know, all the
Yeah.
greats. You know, Pink Floyd, whatever, Led Zeppelin. They, you know, Led Zeppelin albums are like very like heavily produced. There's like a lot of layers. Jimmy Page is the producer, but you know, when they play live, it's fucking so fucking raw, and it melts your face off, and it's its
Right.
own thing. And yeah, maybe it's just like more of like a boomer mentality or purist. But I firmly
I
believe
agree,
that
though.
if you're paying to go see like a live concert and stuff, and they have those backing tracks, I think it does kind of take, you know, you want to go see live music. Live music
Yeah.
is very special, and when they kill it, and like they didn't do it before, and they played fine, they sounded fine. Kevin Parker sounds fine. You know, if he thinks it's like less for some reason, like that's what kind of makes stuff cool, is when you're making it work live.
Yeah.
You know.
I agree. I think if there was one thing I had to nitpick about Tame Impala, it would be their live show.
Which is like, if you watch as a full thing, is, you know, it's a good time.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say but like if I had to elaborate on that further, like I would like to see more of their live show be raw and live, because there's a lot of elements that are like in the computer that they play live, and which is fine.
And they're not really
But it's like
jamming
you're
at
bigger
all.
than that now. It's like you don't have to do that. But yeah, we should actually probably stop. We've been talking for a long time.
Yeah. Any last thoughts about Tame Impala?
Great band. I'm excited to see what they do next. We're in 2022. I feel like the Slow Rush was a bit of a lull. Not the biggest fan of it compared to their first three, but excited for the future. And he, if I had to say one last thing, is that he deserves every shred of fame that he has, and
Every shred, every eyeball,
every person, every stream,
household, every language.
Yeah, he deserves it. I love his music. He's opened a lot of doors sonically for many things that are going to come in the future.
Yeah, great music. I really love those first three albums. There's some, songs off the top of my head. The second song, I don't even know what it's called.
On what album?
The last one. The second song.
Oh,
Then there's the that song's fine.
yeah, Breathe Deeper.
And then the last song.
Yeah.
I know that sounds like I've never really listened to. I've heard it a lot, but since it was released like after those first few months and trying to get into it, I ended up not liking it. I just didn't think the songs were that like great.
Yeah.
Sonically, it sounded fine, I guess. Like if it, you know, stuff he learned in Currents, and then he tried doing, like you said, more like electric, like dance, like he had a lot more of that influence and stuff. But I don't mind like a sequel in sound or sonics, which I felt that was to like Currents, sort of like a like Kanye's first two albums. Like they sound like pretty similar,
Yeah.
but it's like, you know, not every album needs to be like the most different thing. It's just the songwriting and compositions were not as creative or catchy, I thought.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. So hopefully that was interesting. Let us know if you want us to talk about any artists. Popular music we know like pretty well. We like a lot of rock music, but pretty much anything that's like worth knowing, we'd be down to talk about.
Yeah.
I don't know when this one's going to come out, but next we'll record Aphex Twin. That one might be out by this time. Anything else?
No.
All right.
Thanks for listening.
Gracias.